Okay, this lesson is from Math Expressions. We're still in Chapter 1, and today we're going to be in Part 8, so Lesson 8 of Chapter 1. You're probably going to be mad at me for even saying this, but I'm thinking that you're probably going to enjoy this. I think it's going to be a fun day tomorrow. What we're going to be doing is finding strategies for looking at factors or finding factors in multiplication. So we're going to be practicing with some factor puzzles and looking at multiplication charts, and then hopefully at the end of the day we'll have some time to play a game together. So let's just kind of go over what I'm talking about when I say, well, let's talk about factors. Quick review. Factors are the two numbers or the numbers that you multiply to get a factor or to get a product. So you have a factor times a factor is going to equal a product. So something like 3 times 3 is the same as 9. So 3 and 3 are the factors, and 9 is the product. Then when we start talking about division, we say that we can even turn those around, then we take their product divided by our factor is going to give our other factor. So that's kind of how we look at that inverse relationship when we're trying to think of division. But not talking about division today, we're just going to focus on multiplication and finding common factors and putting them together in a puzzle. So what we have here in front of you is a multiplication chart that's been blown up. And in that multiplication chart, we have rows and columns that are highlighted in blue. And eventually, what you're going to get used to is looking at these factor puzzles. But what I want you to look at is we need to figure out if this in the center, we know that these, all the numbers that are in the center of a multiplication chart are our products. The numbers that are on the outside are the factors, the number that we multiply to get these products. So within this column, we have the products 12 and 28. So what we're trying to figure out is what factor do 12 and 28 have in common? Okay. We also then want to look at the opposite side and see we have 12 and 27 to figure out this factor. So what do they have in common? So when we're looking at 12 and 28, we can think, well, they have 2, they have 4, they have 1. So what do we think it is? So we can use the other side to kind of help guide us, thinking of 12 and 27. What do 12 and 27 have in common? Well, I know that you can multiply a number by 3 and by 4 to get 12. So 3 and 4. Okay, so if that works here, does 4 work for 28? Well, what number times 4 gives you 28? Well, let's try 7 over here. And some of you are going to notice that tomorrow it's a lot of trial and error. You might be doing a lot of erasing, trying to figure it out, but just building up on that math knowledge and that your memorization of your multiplication facts. Okay, so going back to this row, so if this is 3 and we have 27, what would be our factor up here? What would be 9? And if this is 9, then we can go down, well, we need to figure out the variable n. So if we have 7 over here and 9 over here, then our n should be 63. Okay. So we have 7, we have 3, 4, and 9, and n should be 63. So within a factor puzzle, these two factors get this product. These two factors are going to give you this product. These two factors give you this product. And these two factors are going to give you that product. Okay. So just working through your puzzle. Okay, let's go to table 2. Once again, we can look at the multiplication chart, and then we can take that and shrink it down and look at a factor puzzle and try to figure it out. So we have 10 and 14 in this row, and n and 42 in this row, and we have 10 and n, 14 and 42. Obviously don't want to start with a variable, the product that has a variable in it. So let's look at 10 and 14, asking ourselves what factor do they have in common? What could this one be? Even thinking, looking at, when you're using the multiplication chart, looking at distance away. Well, if 12 is here, another number is here, and 14, it looks like it might be going up by 2s. Okay, so if this is 2, so if we're thinking that's 2, and 2 here, 2 times what number gives you 10? I'm going to try putting 5 up here. 2 times what number gives you 14? 7. Put 7 up here. That means 5 goes here and 7 goes here. If we have 7 up here, 7 times what number is 42? Well, that would be 6. So let's solve for n. 5 on top, 6 on the side, 6 times 5. N is going to be 30. On your tables tomorrow, what you're going to have is you're going to have multiplication charts in front of you, where when you have numbers, when you have the products in the center, you can start looking down the multiplication chart for places where you have 10 and 14 as a product, and how that relates to 42 when you're finding that unknown. So let's look at some factor puzzles and see if we can solve it. Okay. So looking at that first one, number 3, we have 14 and 35. So 14 and 35, what factor do they have in common? Okay, what would be, thinking of what could you fit in that spot with the outcome of 14 and 35? Well, I'm thinking in my head that I know that 7 times 2 is 14 and 7 times 5 is 35. So I'm going to think that that's 5. Okay, so if that's 5, or sorry, not 5. Goodness, Mrs. Freeman. 7, because that's what they have in common. So 7 here and 7 here. So if this is 7 and 14 is the product, what number times 7? That would be 2. If this is 7 and this is 35, what number times 7 is 35? That's 5. So I'm going to move 2 down here and 5 down here. Okay. If 5 is on the bottom and I have 45 in the center, what number times 5 is 45? And that's 9. Okay. So now if I'm saying that I have 9 in my factor puzzle here, and I have 2 here, so 9 times 2 is what number? And that's going to be 18. Excuse me. So once again, what you're looking at is for what do they have in common, and looking at the rows or the columns where you have 2 products. Okay. Then thinking about which column or row in a multiplication chart would those 2 products both be under. So thinking of your factors, so 15 and 40, I know that they're both, you can multiply 5 by a number to get those products, because 5 times 3 is 15, and 5 times 8 is 40. So they both have 5. I'm going to put 5 here. If I am thinking it's 5, 5 times what number is 15? That's 3. So this column has to be 3. 5 times what number is 40? That was 8. So this column has to be 8. Now I'm going to go finish the rest of my puzzle. If this is 3, what number times 3 gives me 18? That's going to be 6. If I say this is 6, now I can figure out this last box. 6 times 8 is 48. The more and more we get into it, the more and more you're realizing, hopefully, how important it is to know your multiplication facts. Like I said before, tomorrow when you come to class, I will have multiplication charts on your desk so that you can look and see where these patterns are falling, just like we did last Friday when we were doing the mixed up multiplication charts. Okay, so let's try another one. We have 14 and 6. Sometimes, too, what might help you is to take 6 and figure out what the factor pairs are for 6. Well, I have 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Okay, so now I'm going to think about the factor pairs for 14. I have 1 times 14 and 2 times 7. Okay. So they both have 1 and 2, but I'm going to try 2. Okay. If I say that's 2, then this has to be 7. If I say it's 2, then this has to be 3 because 3 times 2 is 6. Okay. If this is 7, does it work for this row? It certainly does because 42 is a product of 7 times 6. Okay. So if that's 6, then I'm going to look in filling up this last one. 3 times 6 is 18. It is okay to draw out those factor pairs next to your chart, just like I did up here. Please do not be afraid to fill up your paper with work to try and solve these factor puzzles. The more and more you do it, the less struggle it's going to be for you, and the more used to your multiplication facts you're going to get. Let's do a couple more, and then we'll save the rest for tomorrow, and you can come with your questions. We're going to look at number 6 here. We have 40 and 15. Like I said, you could take the smaller number 15 and say, well, that's 1 times 15. Then I have 3 times 5. And those are the only factor pairs for the number 15 because it's not divisible by 2. And you can't multiply anything by 4. Okay, so then I'm going to think of 40. Well, I know that 40 has 5 in common. So I'm going to guess that this is 5. Okay, so if that's 5, then this has to be 3. If that's 5, then this row has to be 8. Okay, so if I have 6 here and I said it's 3, what number times 3 is 6? That's 2. If that's 2, 2 times 8 is what? 16. Okay. Moving on to the next one. I have 72 and 16. Let's start with 16. Look at the factor pairs. 1 times 16. 2 times 8. 4 times 4. Thinking of 72. Now I can take 72 in there and go, oh, I know that 8 is a factor of 72. So I bet that this column is 8. So if it's 8, then I know that this is 9. This is 8, then this is 2. Let's see if it works for 27. 9, does 9 times the number equals 27? Yes. 3. If that's 3, then let's figure out this last one. 3 times 2 is 6. Okay. So tomorrow we're going to do factor puzzles, we're going to have multiplication charts, and we're going to start listing out factor pairs for individual numbers and really getting more and more comfortable with your multiplication facts. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to hit submit and have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.